If you open up Google Earth and head to Central Solomon Islands, you'll find yourself here, looking at a dark blue patch of water in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's about the same size as dots of land that make up the nearby islands.
It's a spot known as Lark Shoal, and this bathymetric map confirms that the seafloor is only about 9 metres deep here, and then it very quickly drops off up to 6 kilometres below sea level into this ocean trench. This is a pretty shallow spot for out in the middle of the ocean. So what exactly is it?
Lark Shoal is a seamount. It's an area of shallow water in the Central Solomon Islands, and it's the place where perhaps 2 or 3 islands disappeared very rapidly a few hundred years ago, and those islands were named Teonimenu. We're not sure exactly when Teonimenu disappeared. According to the local residents' oral traditions, it seems to have been sometime between the visit of the explorer Mendana and the explorer James Cook.
I am one of the direct descendants of Teonimanu on my mother's side.
This is Tony Hiorake. He's the director of the Solomon Islands National Museum. He says the story of how Teonimenu disappeared has been passed down through his family's oral histories.
After the island sank, some of my ancestors survived, and they floated on banana trunks and other debris.
Tony's ancestors settled on Ulawa, where they continue to live today.
Every evening after dinner, we normally hear the elders in the family talking about those stories, and not only about Teonimanu, but about different animals, different plants, different ways of fishing, hunting, that people who used to inhabit Teonimanu practiced.
Tony and Patrick set out together to document oral histories from 4 places where survivors of Teonimanu are believed to have settled. They discovered memories of the island were ubiquitous. People in surrounding islands all had memories of Teonimanu.
Most of the relatives that I've talked to seem to tell the same story.
Many recall Teonimenu's tragic fate began when a woman named Saweteo from the island married Roraimenu, a man from nearby Alite Island. One day, Saweteo eloped with another man, Kalitalu, and returned to Teonimenu. Roraimenu became angry and vowed to take his revenge on Saweteo and especially Kalitalu for bringing him such shame. So Roraimenu hatched a plan whereby he would travel to purchase a wave curse to destroy Teonimenu. Roraimenu obtained a wave curse with 8 destructive waves. When he arrived at Alite, he climbed onto a high rock and watched with grim satisfaction as Teonimenu was gradually swamped and crushed by the waves. The 8th wave completely submerged the island.
The people who survived this terrifying ordeal were driven to nearby islands. And yes, while the exact details might be just a little different, Professor Nunn thinks there is a pretty obvious link between the evidence of a sunken island at Lark Shoal and the oral traditions of the Central Solomon Islands.
I think there is a tendency of Western science-trained observers to dismiss all of these things as kind of fantasy, as myth or legend. Why would people in a Western Pacific island group invent a story about a sinking island unless it had actually happened? So I think the tendency now, particularly over the last 10 years or so, is for scientists to take these kinds of stories far more seriously than they once did. So actually as memories of catastrophic events.
So, tales of disappearing islands might not be as far-fetched as previously thought. But how on earth does an island just suddenly disappear?
Teonimenu, where Lark Shoal is today, they all sit along the top of an undersea ridge. And that ridge drops very, very steeply on its eastern side. And this is a place where one section of the Earth's crust is moving down underneath another section like that. And what happens is that they move past each other like this, but then they slip. And whenever there's a slip, there's a huge earthquake on the sea floor that shakes everything on the sea floor, including the islands. And sometimes these earthquakes cause landslides that are so gigantic they cause entire islands to slip suddenly beneath the ocean surface.
Through an analysis of seismic data, Professor Nunn identified a buildup of debris from landslides inside the trench, which suggests that the ridge is inherently unstable.
The case of Te Oniman is a good example where science can corroborate oral histories.
Across the Pacific, there are oral histories documenting vanished islands or volcanic lands which have blown themselves to pieces. When the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcano erupted in 2022, it became just the latest example, giving scientists an unprecedented view into the life cycle of an island.
There are thousands of islands in the Pacific Basin, and many of those formed in places where there's a lot of tectonic activity. And in all of those places, it causes islands both to form and to disappear. So my feeling is that scientists should be paying a lot more attention to bodies of surviving oral tradition where they still exist, in places like the Central Solomon Islands, because there's information there that can inform our pasts, but also help us manage the future.
It's happening today. This is a new island that has been built.
Tony and fellow descendants hope to keep the lessons of Tiana alive for future generations.
We need to prepare. We need to have the skills or the different mindsets to enable us to mitigate the impacts of those catastrophic events. We can try and educate them about geohazards and also about maintaining and keeping the traditional cultures and stories, legends and myths that people have about Te Oniman.